you've been struggling with something internally for a long time, and I just wanted to have a conversation with you about it, and I think you're ready to have that conversation.
My name's Jay Crowley from St. John. Grew up out Garnet Settlement in the woods. Pretty normal childhood. The one thing I always did was music. Anywhere from sitting in our bedroom as kids growing up wishing to be rock stars to playing in garages to playing some pretty big stages in the last couple of years. My addiction with alcohol and I guess we'd even say like anti-anxiety medication.
Okay. So, when was the first time you had a drink?
I was 14 years old. It was out in a place called Rothesay, New Brunswick.
Yep.
And it was actually with a cousin of mine. And his friend was home alone. His parents were away for the evening, had quite the luscious looking bar. And just being kids, we thought it was a reason to get in trouble. Remember, we were smoking cigarettes and we thought, why not have a drink? And we weren't drinking just beer. I remember any hard stuff we could find, we were doing shots. And that was my first experience, getting drunk.
How did you feel?
It's funny because I don't care who you are, the first time you drink, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
It tastes like shit. It's gross. It burns, whatever. And then everybody's puking. The next day is even worse. And everybody says they'll never do that again.
Right. 14 years of age.
At 14 years old.
And the question, I guess, do you remember the first time you thought to yourself, I need a drink? Not I want a drink, but I need a drink.
The first thing that comes to mind, is when my grandfather had passed away. Him and I were really close. I remember getting the phone call that he to get to the hospital right now because he's not going to make it. He hung on for a couple more hours, and then we had all the family went back to his place after he had passed, and it was in June, so the weather was really nice, and we all went back. And I remember driving to his house and thinking the anxiety and the panic and I was so overwhelmed that I just thought I need a drink. And I went to the liquor store and I don't know, I can't remember exactly what I grabbed, but I grabbed more than enough.
Yeah.
Enough that could have fed the whole party. And I think I drank every bit of it on my own just to try to deal with the pain that I was going through.
Right.
And I took it really hard.
And again, like I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not an addictions counselor, I'm not anybody but your friend here, right? So say I don't have the authority to tell you what's what, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but right. I have some thoughts and some questions that maybe will help you recognize the trigger and understand why you're going towards what you're going towards.
Well, and I want other people to recognize triggers.
Beautiful. And I think that was the point of us having this conversation. We're doing stuff with your previous band, Sonic Detour, right? Like we first started, and to be fair, when I first got back here, I didn't find it to be as bad. But the more we did shows, we were at venues, things like that, and sometimes the liquor was free or whatever the case might be, or it was dirt cheap. It was open field, right? Like you were just going for it. A lot of the times you used to say to us, I'm a fun drunk. And it's not fun.
A lot of people have their own
way of
thinking of what they look like when they're drunk. Mm-hmm. And I can promise you this, when you see yourself on camera, it's not what you think.
It wasn't like I was ever mad at you about it. I was never mad at you. I was sad and scared for my friend. But when you have people in your life all around you that are abusing the same substances or other substances, it makes it very difficult to get yourself straight, right?
Absolutely. And when you're in the environment of, it could be anything, in my case, being a musician, it could be anything. If you're into motorcycles or you're into this or wherever there's alcohol, if you are in that environment, you're not sober, and you're not even planning on being sober at this point, you're gonna drink.
Yep.
And then even if you're planning on being sober or trying to, or whatever state you're in your sobriety, in your journey with it, is you can't be in those scenarios. You just can't.
Right.
Right. It's like giving a cocaine addict
Free coke.
putting a line of cocaine in front of them.
Yeah.
And then telling them, make sure you have fun tonight, but don't do that cocaine. And I'm not saying you can't have fun and be sober,
Right.
but it depends on what stage you are in your sobriety to be able to muscle up that willpower
Right.
to not do it.
So we obviously know some friends that are sober, but we've watched one particular person do it quietly. We know that person is sober, but watching them go about their business and understanding the struggle that it must be, because they're going out to the same type of venues as us, obviously, right? Being in bands and stuff like that. And they seem to be cutting through there, right? People like that are rare. Or what have you seen from there that you can take away to help yourself?
Well, first of all, I want to tell you what my struggle is. I think it's only fair to say that before I can tell you where I am right now. Is I struggled from a young age. The earliest I can remember is 8 years old, when my father was shot, with anxiety.
Yes.
Extreme anxiety and panic disorder and depression. And of course, at a young age, at 8 years old, I didn't have access to alcohol or anything like that. And today, when I talk to my mother about it, because I'm on medications now to try to keep it at bay.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not, the medication helps, but the alcohol,
Counteracts it.
well, no, the alcohol made it 100%.
Oh.
When I'm drunk, there's no anxiety, there's no depression. The world is amazing. Everything's great. The person that I don't like is really a good person at this moment. Right?
Yeah.
But what I was saying about my mother, she blames herself, but I'm 40 years old. When you go way back then, 30 years plus, mental health was just becoming a thing. People were just starting to talk about it.
Yeah.
And she blames herself. Well, I hid it. I thought I was crazy at 8 years old, having these thoughts of these panic disorders, being in school and having to run to the bathroom. And I was always the fun-loving guy, full energy, the class clown, at always performing at talent shows. Who would have thought that Jay Crowley had anxiety and depression?
Mm-hmm.
Because depression has nothing but a smile.
Right.
Right? You know that.
Yeah.
A lot of people know that. So fast forward 20 years or whatever. Actually, say 20 years. When I realized that if I was drinking, there was no more depression, there was no more anxiety. But it only was a Band-Aid. It only helped at the time. And this is where it got worse for me. Because then when I became medicated on anti-anxiety and depression medications, you would, the next day after you come down off your drunk or your high or whatever it was that night, you're really depressed. You got a lot of anxiety. You're really concerned about what you did the night before. Oh, it's amplified 1,000 times. So I'm taking these Ativans and citalopram, and I can't even think of the names of them all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm eating them, and then and that's the only way to get myself level to put in a day with the band or at work or be a father.
Right.
Because you can't get drunk because you have to do these things. So I need to medicate to be what I just called normal. But then at nighttime, I didn't need those anymore.
Right.
Because I could drink.
Right.
And then it even turned into drinking. You figured out that if you took a couple of these and then drank on it, your drunk was, instead of having 12 beer to get buzzed or whatever, you only needed 6. So that was a whole nother problem.
Right.
Right. So it became a revolving circle of pills and alcohol for me.
Right.
And it just became a revolving circle. Now you're dependent on these pills as well as the alcohol.
And I don't think a lot of people realize how much the two go hand in hand. I really
They
don't.
go hand in hand.
And I think there's a lot of problem around education on medication.
If it's not used correctly, there's a lot of problems. And I didn't use it correctly. Now, mind you, I use it correctly now.
And how do you feel now that you...
Just to come and do this interview today, I had to take a pill that is prescribed to me to be able to calm down, because knowing I was going to talk about something personal.
Yeah.
I had to, it gives you anxiety to know you're really putting yourself out there for people to see.
Yeah.
But again, it was using it properly because I'm sober right now. My previous band, Sonic Detour, and my current band, Candy Heart, we're having a lot of success, right?
Yeah.
A lot of success, playing a lot of big venues, a lot of radio play overseas.
Right.
And with that comes when you go to a show and you play, whether before you get on stage or you come off stage, people want to buy you a beer. They want to give you a shot. They want you to go do a line of cocaine with them, smoke a joint with them. They want to just say like, hey, you did a great job. Let me do this for you.
Yeah.
And that for me is the struggle, because that stigma of, living the rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah.
That was part of my problem is, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and that's what it was. That's what you've seen in magazines and on TV. You still see it.
100%.
Of all those rockers,
Just
rappers.
getting
Loaded, getting drunk, getting fucked up, man. And we wanted to be that. Like, let's be honest.
100%.
Have all the women, have all this. So, and it was like, to be that, you have to do that. And we know that that's not true anymore.
Right.
But that was also part of my problem.
It was, again, the educational piece. People believing something that's not necessarily there, right?
Yeah, like you don't have to be a drunk or a cocaine addict or anything to, like, you had to smoke if you wanted to be cool.
Yeah.
Well, what did we do? We smoked. Then it went from smoke, and then it went to weed, and then into the beer. Like, it's just, and then next thing you know, I have a problem. And now I'm living that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I felt like to be that, to be the rock and roller that I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
I have to be drunk. I have to have a drink in my hand. I have to have that. And that's not true.
Right. Because it wasn't alcohol that put in the work to learn the instrument.
No.
Or the music.
No.
Or to write the music. Or to think of it. Alcohol had nothing to do with it.
Right. And then even the one thing I will say is I was always pretty good at being pretty level-headed on stage. I would always keep it down to a couple drink minimum until after I played. And then my famous line was to my bandmates or to my manager, anybody, was, okay, let the floodgates open. And to me, that was just get all the drinks we can, the shots, the bartender, open the tabs, as well as people are handing you drinks. And then it was party on.
Right.
But the next day, in between my ears and that brain of mine, that was a dangerous place to be.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, and you got to think too, there's different layers to it too. You think about, you just have bad health. And in truth be told, that's the biggest issue of it all is health, like physical and mental. Your mental health obviously has been suffering.
The mental health has been suffering for a long time, and the alcohol being added to it makes it worse. But speaking about health, like I recently, over the last year or two, went to the doctor for a routine checkup, ordered blood tests. I'm 40 years old now, so that seems to be a thing. Check engine lights on, ordered some blood tests, came back, said, your liver numbers are up, your liver enzymes. And I said, well, what's that mean? And he said, well, it could be, the food you eat. And I always ate fairly healthy. I'm conscious about that. But in the back of my mind, I knew why they were up. So he said, oh, you should just watch your alcohol consumption, maybe start working out, stuff like that. So I brushed it off. A couple months later, went back for more tests, routine tests. The numbers kept climbing.
Yeah.
But he never told me to stop drinking. He just said, you should, just be careful, cut back a little bit. Well, cut back to me meant instead of drinking 24, I'll drink 15 or 12. So that was my mindset. And then recently I went back. So I did a few blood. Every time I went, they were up. But this time the doctor actually called me and said, can I see you in my office? So I knew it was bad. Yeah, I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah. So
I showed up and I knew what he was going to say. I wasn't prepared for the number that he gave me, but he said in a month, since October to January, you jumped from 197 to 309. And that was the first time that doctor looked at me and said, you're done. You need to stop. And we're sending you to a liver specialist. I had some plans that weekend with some friends of mine. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself, okay, this one last weekend, one last hurrah. So that I can't remember. I think it was on a Wednesday or a Thursday that I was in his office. And then I went Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And this never happened to me before, but the last couple times I've had blackouts where I've woken up literally we've all had those nights where you don't remember, but as the day goes on, you remember. To this day, and this happened in October, the first one, I don't remember anything. Like I still, to this day, don't remember anything. And I was rushed to the hospital and then I recently, before I got sober again, I had another one, and that was my coming to Jesus moment, so to speak, when I didn't remember anything. I came home, it was full of blood. One of my prized possession bass guitars was smashed into a million pieces. I had blood all over my face, all over my hands. I was bruised. Didn't know where my truck was, nothing. And next thing you know, I got family members around me. The paranoia. I was sitting there with a knife in my hand, looking out the window, thinking the cops were coming or somebody was coming to get me, and it was awful. But I kept drinking that day. And the sad thing is that was the only thing that calmed me down, is it brought me back down. My father was there, and he said, you went from 100, and he said, as you drank in the middle of the day, I watched you level out. And I drank till 10 o'clock that night. And I woke up at 3 a.m. I can't remember what they call it, but I was basically, my body was going through withdrawal. And I was shaking so bad, and I was cold, but I was sweating, and all I could do was I went and sat in the shower and in the fetal position and just shook and shook. And I had a temperature of 103 for 3 days until I can't remember. I took a lot of meds and a lot of alcohol for days on end. And sometimes I would take the Ativan or whatever it was I had at the time for an anti-anxiety med, and I would crush it.
Right.
I would crush it up and I would snort it because I always thought that it worked faster, worked better. So you'd crush it up and snort it and then continue drinking.
Right.
And that can cause blackouts, I'm told. But anyway, that was my revolving circle.
So that was pretty heavy. You had one blackout, you had your second one. Let's be real. I've told you, your family's told you, your friends have told you, I'm sure your partner's told you that you need help.
You got to want to. You have to want to. But wanting to, usually, in my opinion, things happen to make you to want to. And I can speak for myself. Again, going back to the doctor, when he says, oh, well, your liver numbers are high.
Right.
You don't care. And again, I'm speaking of my own experience. I didn't care about me personally, my health. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to see it affect other people you care about, that could be anybody, your mom, your kids, your dad, your dog, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That, for me, that's when, and even then I seen it was affecting them, but then it comes to a point where they break and they're just like, I can't watch you do this anymore. I just can't.
Yeah.
That's where, for me, when my kids said, when my daughter happened to see me in the state that she's seen me in, no daughter should ever have to see their father like that. And that for me was enough to say, okay, something's got to change here.
Yeah.
Because when when your own kids are telling you that they're going to write you off, you know what, your friends can say it. And I'm speaking from a father's perspective. I also want to say, no matter how drunk I was or how many benzos I was on or whatever, I could function as a father, but I always had those demons and I didn't want my kids to see them, and I was kidding myself because they did see it. So for your kids to tell you, we love you, but we're going to have to cut you off, write you off, that was enough for me.
Yeah.
That was enough for me. Not even the doctor saying that your health is...
Yeah. Because when you have depression, the last thing you're going to care about is yourself.
Right.
Right.
But when you're kids, you can be depressed, but you're still going to love your kids.
Right.
More than anything. And for me, that was enough to say, okay.
Well, I'm glad that you got to that point and said okay, because I've definitely seen some other people where it's like choose your kids or choose your addiction, and they definitely chose the addiction.
100%. And I remember always being that guy to sit there, and I don't want to judge, because I know a lot of people with addictions, that are good people, and I remember sitting there thinking to myself, man, like how can you pick up that crack pipe or the Coke or the bottle or whatever over your family?
Right. How?
But some of them do.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna. And to answer your question, for me, that was it.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to sit back and look at what your current life is and say, okay, there's some choices that are going to be hard choices I need to make, but I need to make them? Life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That weighs on me constantly. As soon as I open my eyes, I think today's a new day, and I'm going to be faced with choices. And I got to make these choices, these different choices. And you know what? It could come down to anybody, a certain person that asks you to go out for lunch.
Yeah.
And that could just mean wings and beer, little things like that are triggers for me. That's a choice that I need to make. I'm not cutting that person off, but I'm cutting that person off temporarily because I have to.
Yeah.
And I have to change my circle.
That's true.
And I'm actually very fortunate to have the friends that I have. One of my friends, I call him one of my brothers, AJ Arsenault, the guitar player in Candy Heart. He was one of the ones that seen me in the second, I call them episodes.
Sure.
And he looked at me, and he's been one of my drinking partners. Fortunately for him, he has a handle on it. I wish I could be that person, but I just don't. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
He and his wife, his wonderful wife, said, we're going to do it with you. And since they've said that, they have not even had a drink.
Support is obviously huge, right?
You need support to do this. Nobody can do it alone.
So I just want to segueing from that. I'm going to go back. We're going to go back in time a little bit. This is more for your mom than anything. I want her to, when she sees this finally, to know that it's not her fault.
It's not her fault. Therapists, psychiatrists, and they diagnosed me with form of PTSD
from that time.
from that time.
And
And the alcohol
makes it worse.
makes it better.
It makes it better.
Alcohol makes things better in the moment.
Right. They don't make things better.
No, it's always
Band-Aid.
worse after.
They're a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid. It's always worse after, and that is where the revolving circle was with me, because then I would just turn to the pills.
Your family and the people around you, it was their first time dealing with all of it too. So that's why I want them to hear when we say that it's not their fault. It's not your fault either. But I think deep down, you're mad at yourself because you felt powerless.
100% you do, yeah. My
Right.
therapist told me that.
And I think, the drinking helps remove that feeling of anger towards yourself.
I always envied those people that can go out to supper or dinner with friends, or come home after work, or sit and watch a basketball game. We both love basketball, and just have a beer.
Right.
That wasn't me, because if I had one, I was going to drink 20.
Right.
And if there was 40 in the house, I was going to drink whatever my body would physically let me drink
Until you passed out.
until I passed out. And I couldn't stop. And I always envied those people that could just have one or two and then stop. So like I said, how many times I would go to supper with my better half or friends and just couldn't have one.
Right.
Just couldn't have one.
Right.
So I was good at saying like, no, I'm okay, because first of all, I knew I had to drive, or, I'll just have water or whatever. And then guys would laugh at you. You're going to have water? Yeah, because if I have one, you guys are going home tonight and I'm not.
Right.
I'm going to end up in jail. I'm going to end up God knows where.
Yeah.
Because I can't
I
can't turn it off.
Right. So with that being the case, I mean, like you said, you got to change your circle, change the habits. You know how long it takes to form a habit? 90 days, 3 months will form a new habit, right? If you're consistent, what are you going to find yourself lost in now? Is it the music? Because that's really ultimately your sole passion. You've had something negative happen in your life, you wrote about it. You had something positive happen in your life, you wrote about it.
What am I going to do? Now what?
Idle, right? You can't stay idle.
I can't stay idle, but if I had a guitar in my hand, I had a drink. Right?
So that's there. That was my question, because I know you always had two and two hand in hand. Right?
Hand in hand. Or, if I went to the studio for a recording session, I had a drink.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I had this, it helps me be more creative and this and that. And that's not true. Maybe it helps other people. I remember watching a interview one time with Jimi Hendrix, talking about being high and being on mushrooms and all this stuff, being creative, and all the music gods talking to him. I'm going to call bullshit. And the reason why I say that is because since I've gotten sober, because I was so worried about musically that I didn't think I would do as well, I've been doing nothing but better. It's funny, I sit in the studio with the producer, and this has happened recently, sitting in the studio, and AJ just laid down some phenomenal guitar parts. And the producer's playing it back to us, and we're listening to it. And I'm hearing things that we like to call the good mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're catching them. Or I'm hearing things that haven't happened yet that could happen. And that's the stuff that the other guys, the sober guys, were catching.
Yeah,
and
you
now
were missing. They were going over your head.
Yeah, because your brain is so sluggish. And after they point them out to you, you go, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, absolutely, let's do that. But now it's like, now that my brain's clear again, I'm catching them and I'm hearing them, and it's so what I was scared of, I shouldn't have been scared of, because it's for the best.
Yeah.
And I find myself I'm very like in work mode now, where before It's like you wake up hungover, you have to go to the studio. You're dragging your ass. You don't want to go to work. You don't want to sit down and listen to people talk about all this stuff. And I won't get into the music lingo or even the business side of it, which is very important.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear that stuff, but sober, you do want to hear it, and you're actually taking it all in.
Yeah.
And as common sense as that sounds, until you experience it, it's not common sense to say, well, yeah, obviously you're sober. But I was never sober, because after I sobered up, I would be on the pills to try to just feel okay to move on with my day.
So you've been in a constant state of
some sort of substance abuse.
Yeah. I feel like you're giving me this hope that you have a new lease on life, right? Like you've got...
Still a process.
It is, of course, it's going to be a process, right? But what are the things that, people can do around you to help you?
Honestly, it's just talking. Lecturing is not good for any addict. Lecturing is the worst thing you can do. But to just have a conversation about it and show support is the best thing you can do.
Right.
Positive support, it's like having the pep talk with the basketball team. They're losing before they go out. Going in and yelling at them, and I've been there and done that, is not going to help.
No.
But the positive support is the best thing you can do.
One thing that I would recommend too,
for somebody,
for me and the rest of the friends of us out there, is not to bring alcohol around you and not offer it to you.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
But there's some people who don't see that, because you know what it is? They're going to look at this as they're losing a drinking buddy.
My band members, who I spend a lot of time with, obviously, they're like brothers.
Yeah.
And as soon as I disappeared for a few days and nobody knew where I was, and they found out where I was and what happened, just meaning that OJ was on a bender, I guess we'll call it. They were very supportive and had an intervention, if you will.
Yeah.
But there was no lecture. It was just positive reinforcement on, you can do this. We don't want to lose you. Sober Jay is productive Jay. Goose said, because Goose goes 100 miles a minute. Goose is a workhorse, man. He's a friggin' steam engine. You can't stop him.
Yeah.
And he said, the only one that can keep up with me is you when you're sober. And that was a compliment, but it hurt too at the same time, because what you're telling me is the last couple months or whatever the time frame was, you weren't keeping up. Yes, I was showing up to my shows, and yes, I always put on a performance, and I always play, and I always
this is exactly like what it was with a previous band and a previous band member, if you recall.
I do.
They show up and do their shows and this, that, and the other, and
you're a robot.
It affected everything around you.
It affected everything around you, yeah. And
to the point where that band doesn't exist anymore.
No, unfortunately it doesn't. And that band was...
you had an opportunity with that one.
Yeah, and people still check out Sonic Detour. People still see me around town, or hell, excuse me, I was in Moncton a couple months ago, and we played at this awesome bar called Zeros. And somebody was in the crowd, couple guys and their girlfriends or wives or whatever, and they approached me in the mall and said, "Hey, you're the bassist from Sonic Detour, great job, da-da-da-da, when's your next show?" I had to tell them that we disbanded.
Yeah.
For unfortunate circumstances. But of course I said, myself and the singer Goose Genclear formed a new band almost 2 years ago, and to check it out. And they actually sent me a message and said they love it.
Yeah.
So they just kind of switched one for the other, I guess. But substance abuse played a big role in that band too.
Right.
And not just from other people, from myself too.
Right. It wasn't just one person. I'm not singling out one person.
And it's funny because we would find any reason after we left the studio from rehearsal or recording again, I won't name names, but there was a handful of us from the band that was just a reason to, oh, we need to go celebrate because we got 5 songs recorded for the album today. And then we would disappear in town. And
next thing you know,
it's 6 a.m.
yeah,
Sun's coming up.
people are having breakfast.
People are having breakfast, and you got to be in the studio in 3 more hours, and you haven't slept.
Yeah.
And then you go on autopilot.
And give your worst.
You give your worst. And again, speaking for myself, it was turn to the pills to get your
Levels up.
get that extra large coffee into you and take your pills. But if you would have went to bed at a decent hour and didn't drink, I didn't need those pills.
It's funny. I had my music on shuffle the other day, and a Sonic Detour song came on, and I was like, oh, I haven't heard this in like years. 2 years now, probably, or better. I haven't heard this particular song. And I was like, what are the odds it's been that long since I've heard that?
The one thing that I will say about Sonic Detour and Candy Heart and any music I write personally, or Goose or AJ, any of us, even yourself and your hip hop stuff, is if you listen to our lyrics, we write all about experiences. And I know most artists do anyway, but anything we write, I didn't even have to sit down for this talk or this interview because it's all in the music.
That's right.
Right. But a lot of people I find don't listen to lyrics anyway. But if this is the way to get it out and just, be transparent about it and sit here and answer questions and tell you, then so be it. But music has a lot of hidden secrets in it, or messages, if you will, that people should listen to anyway. I know for me, I grew up listening to Nirvana, Alice in Chains. Like, I was big in the 90s grunge
Korn
scene. Yeah. And then moved on to the new metal. But my dad raised me on, Zeppelin, Bob Dylan, all that stuff.
Chicago.
Especially Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
One of my friggin' idols is Johnny Cash. You want to talk about somebody who sings about his experiences and hurting himself and taking all those medications, and like, us musicians, sometimes when you have no one to talk to, or you feel like you always have someone to talk to, but when you feel like you don't, it comes out in the music with a pen and paper and a guitar, and that's always actually been, besides the alcohol and the pills, has been my therapy. Is I might even just sit down and listen to a song,
right,
to get me through the day.
Oh, yeah. Drugs and alcohol, rock and roll, baby. That is toxic. Or do you find that to be just part of the culture and it has to be accepted?
Well, it's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not part of the culture anymore, because the kids nowadays they're not. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't say that they're not. It's not in their face like it was with us, especially with social media. But the one comment that jumps out to me years ago, I couldn't even tell you when, but I remember watching a video or even reading it in a magazine that Dave Grohl actually said that there's no such thing as rock stars anymore because they're all sober. And that, as much as I love Dave Grohl and nothing against him, that I guess I have to disagree with that, because if I was to agree with him right now, the interview that I'm doing, then it would be a bold-faced lie. So I think I know where he's going with that, but you can still, I'm living proof that you can still get up on stage as a rock star or a musician, anybody, and still put on a good show, play your instrument to your best of your ability, awe the crowd, and still be sober. Because that crowd, at the end of the day,
they don't care.
Unless you're drinking right in front of them,
they don't know.
They don't know if you've smoked a joint before you went on stage, or if you did a line of Coke, or if you drank 10 beer, unless you're falling over on your face.
Right.
So to me, the lifestyle of being the sex, drugs, and rock and roll in my time or my experience, that didn't happen on stage anyway. That happened backstage,
Right.
or at the after parties,
Right.
right? So the crowd nowadays, they don't, well, especially nowadays, they don't see that. We've done shows at local high schools,
Yep.
if you remember.
Yep.
After we played these shows, I mean, to these kids, like some of them, that was the first concert they ever seen.
Yeah.
And that was actually, we played Simon's High School, and that was the first show that I ever played sober.
And how'd you do?
We did phenomenal. But I actually had anxiety going into that show because it happened at 1 p.m. at a high school.
Right.
How am I going to play this show
That was
sober?
strange.
It was very strange. And I remember leaving that show, and these kids went wild, man. They were mosh pitting. There was kids up on each other's shoulders. And I remember actually, the adult father in me saying in the microphone, you guys, I love you're having a good time. I love you're rocking out, but you guys got to calm down because somebody's going to get hurt. Because one of the teachers looked over at me and was like, you got to tell them to calm down. And I hated saying that because 16-year-old me
wants to go hard.
would have been the first one
Yeah.
on somebody's shoulders or crowd surfing or stage diving.
Exactly.
But these kids came up to me after and asking me about, oh yeah, you guys must get really fucked up after a show. And I remember sitting there thinking, this kid's like 15 years old. And then I thought, is that what
They think?
Is that what you think? Is that what you, because he wasn't wrong.
No.
He wasn't wrong. I wasn't talking about specifically that show,
Right.
which I probably did get fucked up that night.
Yeah.
But that's what that kid is thinking.
It's kind of sad, isn't it?
It was sad. And that hit me hard.
It's a different time, man. There's social media. And that's another thing that I think weighs into people's anxieties and stuff like that too. Could you imagine if a drunken version of yourself, so let's say one of your episodes, is filmed for like 3 hours that you don't know about and then gets uploaded to online?
No, it was,
Do you know what I mean? I know that's not the case, but
I'm saying it would be mortifying. But you know what? And going back to the kids,
yeah,
we even went to different high schools, and that's what I wanted to say is that same question or that same comment was said to me by other kids on a different side of the city. So that's what kids are thinking, actually. Like, oh, look at these guys, man, they are up there rocking it, and they're this, and how much did your guitar cost, and this. And then one kid said, man, you guys must make some good money doing this. Yeah, we make money. Man, you guys must get fucked up after the show. And that brought me right back to the other kid at the other school. And I'm sitting here thinking, that's what these kids think, is as soon as the show's done, we're going back with nothing but drugs and alcohol and women. And then one kid even said, like, oh, you must have all kinds of women hanging off you, da, da, da. And he wasn't wrong, but that's what the lifestyle, the rock and roll lifestyle portrays to these kids. And it portrayed it to me too.
Yeah.
That's why it was so attractive to me.
Sure.
That saying sex, drugs, and rock and roll is one of the truest statements I ever heard. I remember being excited when my drummer was dating a girl and we were setting up for a big show. I won't even say the venue, a big venue. We were setting up, we were doing sound check, and he found another girl's sexy panties in his drum bag from a weekend prior.
Right.
And I started laughing because I said, holy shit. I said, we made it. We made it. I said, that's some Motley Crue shit, man. We made it. Well, it was a joke. We laughed about it.
Right.
But, so I'm going through my phone, watching YouTube, having morning coffee, and I'm looking up musicians that have gotten sober, that struggle with sobriety.
Yeah.
And it's all public.
Yeah.
James Hetfield from Metallica, Zakk Wylde. And actually, I didn't know that Zakk Wylde was sober.
Right.
And his story was kind of like mine.
Interesting.
He went to the doctor for a routine checkup, and they said, your liver numbers, your enzyme numbers are way out of whack. And he said, I quote, he said, so what, doc, I have to lay off the sauce? The doctor said to him, you neither lay off the alcohol or you're going to need a liver transplant. And then he spoke about his pancreas. I'm not a doctor, so.
Yeah.
And he said, you might not even make it off the table. He said, or you continue playing with your band and your friends and your children and live a healthy life. And he said, I never had another drink from that day. So these are things that play over in my head, and I'm sitting here going, well, Zach Wild can do it. And he's an icon to and a role model to millions and millions of people around the world. Why can't I do it? You know?
That's right. You can. 100%.
Right. And so little things like that help me. And it doesn't even have to be famous people. It's just, to me, these are the people that I looked up to, that I grew up watching. I often wonder if one of my idols, Kurt Cobain, was still alive, if he would be sober today.
Yeah. That's kind of a crazy one to think about.
I often wonder about that, and we'll never know.
Right.
But Robin Williams.
Yep.
I got really deep into him because he suffers from anxiety and depression.
Right.
I also didn't know that he was a severe cocaine addict and alcoholic.
Yeah.
And he was talking about blackouts, the same blackouts that I was experiencing.
That's right.
And of course, God rest his soul, but he was making a joke about it. You couldn't help but laugh, but he was telling a true story.
Yeah.
And the sad part about addiction is it usually ends in the way that he went. Like going back to Zach Wild, that he is a positive role model to me.
Yep.
Because he got sober.
Right.
And for the reasons he got sober.
Right.
You know, he mentioned his kids.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you found a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities to your life, your personal life.
Big time. There's even role models that I have that aren't famous musicians or famous people or in any type of spotlight at all. I don't want to name any names, but people that they're good dads or good family men. And yeah, they have the odd drink, and that's okay. But they're people they're good people. They help around the community. That I would say, yeah, that man or woman or whatever is a role model to me because you appreciate what they do. I don't want to say you want to be like them, but you wouldn't mind taking a page out of their book, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said, maybe I'm late to the game, but at 40 years old, you got a lot of regrets because of the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
You missed out on a lot.
Yeah.
Things at the time you didn't think
We're not that big of a deal.
weren't that big of a deal. Maybe, you know, I've watched my daughter play basketball or my son play hockey a million times.
Sure.
But there was that one game where I was hungover that I couldn't get out of bed to go to, I missed. And she got MVP, or my son got player of the game, or whatever. I missed out on it because I couldn't get my ass out of bed. And I have to live with that. And to anybody else, I'd just say that's nothing. But to me, it was huge.
Yeah.
You know, or I didn't make a family gathering with my parents who are getting older because I was too hungover, you know, or maybe still drunk. Or I was so fucked up the night before that my anxiety was so high that I couldn't
even get out of bed.
I couldn't even get out of bed to go because I couldn't mentally deal with just being around people. And that's another thing I want to touch on real quick is I drank to deal with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's funny when I talk to my doctor, or not even my doctor, just other people, because, you know, I've been a performer since I was, as long as I can remember, anywhere from choir to theater arts to playing my guitar in front of a school, playing in a band.
Yeah.
Mental health's a weird thing because you would look at me and say, well, how's that guy have anxiety? How's that guy have depression? He's always laughing. He's always smiling. Look, he just played a show. He's this. But everybody has triggers, right? And
100%.
anxiety is different for me and it's different for you and everybody. Again, I would drink to deal with the anxieties of, it didn't matter, whatever it was at that time, I would have to drink and I would sneak them, or before I had to go, I'd chug back 4 or 5 just to get the edge off, mixed with a little bit of anxiety meds that I may have snorted. And now I'm okay. And I can go deal with life because that's just life.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's for some person it could be a work meeting. Maybe somebody had to go to church. Maybe somebody had a band meeting.
Yep.
And that's how I dealt with being put in uncomfortable situations that would give me anxiety. I want to get back to my old self. And I know that you know what that is, like, you know, the fun-loving guy. I haven't been that fun-loving guy without alcohol. I couldn't tell you when. It's been years and years and years.
Pretty much your entire adult life.
Yeah. I can sit and point fingers on why I feel like I'm that way or certain people that made me feel that way. And I don't take it back. But you're in control for the most part of your own emotions.
Yeah.
And to whatever kids or even my own peers and my age see this, you know, especially the kids, because I watch my kids' friends go through exactly what we went through, and you're going down a dangerous road. A dangerous road. You think it's cool. We all thought it was cool. It's not cool. Nothing good comes from it. Not one good thing comes from drinking or abuse of any substance.
Agreed.
And you never go into it thinking that it's going to be a problem until it is a problem. It could be anything. Cigarettes, weed, coke, we could go on.
Yeah. But
it's always cool at the time, and 9 times out of 10, you're doing it because your friends are doing it. And nowadays, they're taking videos of each other throwing up and being all fucked up and stuff. And when I see those videos, they do nothing but hurt my heart.
Same.
And I've seen them.
Same.
And they're laughing about it. And I'm sitting here going,
there's nothing funny
about this.
No.
So I'd just like those kids to look at me, you know, 40-year-old man battling an addiction with not just alcohol, but
other things,
pills now to try to get myself right. To just say, like, I don't want to be like that, but I want to be like, but I appreciate the effort he's putting in to get right. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And to those people that think with whatever hobby they have, that is, you can do that hobby without that addiction, the substance, or whatever it is you're into. I'll call it a course, but it was more meetings through the East Coast Music Awards. And that was actually the first time that I got to sit with my peers, other musicians from the East Coast, Canada, and talk about exactly what I'm talking about in my situation with the being at the venues, the clubs, the bigger venues, the bars, and dealing with it being right in your face and sharing. We were just sharing stories, and that's all it was sharing stories of different struggles and different ways to deal with it.
Is there anything else you want to just like look at the camera and tell yourself?
The only thing that jumps out to me about being sorry for is, of course, my kids and my mother, my father, for all the things I put them through. You know, even though you're 30, 40 years old, you're always going to worry about your kids. And my family, my kids, my mom, my dad, whatever, anybody who it had affected that night or that day that I was up, nobody knew where I was out drinking, didn't know what was going on. I'd like to apologize for putting them through that. Because again, as a father, when my daughter or my son are out in their cars, you know, at their friends' places, your mind goes to the worst place. And I put my parents through that till the day, like, you'll never stop worrying about your kids, but that didn't help.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to apologize to them for putting them through that. And it was selfish, but it was the only way I knew how to deal with it.
What about for yourself?
I don't know. I don't want to apologize, or I just want to keep trying. Because I never look at anybody and say, I never promise anybody anything. All I can say to people is that right now I'm sober and I want to stay sober.
Yep.
But I can't look at them and promise them in the face that
It will stay that way.
it will stay that way. I know I'm trying and I want to.
Yep.
But I feel like if I promise or guarantee, I might just let you down. But that's not my goal.